Welcome back to another episode of Industry Insights. Today we have Jeremy Whitmer with us. So could you tell us what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm an account executive with PwC. And so basically I'm in software sales. And so we have a product called ProEdge, which has been available for about 2 years now. We license it to our clients. And so my job is to basically take it to market. So help position it to clients, basically selling the software. And then also the position entails a bit more than that. So some like project management with different campaigns, marketing efforts we're running, things like that.
Okay, like, does that mean you would sell your software to other companies?
Correct. Yeah. So it's we would typically call it like say B2B SaaS. So that means business to business software as a service. And so typically like when I'm selling the software, especially since it's like a learning and development software, I'm selling it to either people from the HR team, people from the learning development team within these different organizations, or I may be selling to specific departments. And so I might be selling to say like finance or cybersecurity or risk management or just whomever we position the offering for.
Okay. Is it fine if I ask you some questions regarding your job?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so how did you get to this profession?
So it's kind of interesting because I don't know if you know too much of my background here, but it's interesting that I ended up in software sales. So I started off actually in engineering, and so like in undergrad, that was my major, was mechanical engineering with especially in automotive design, and spent a couple of years, or actually about 5 years, working as an engineer in the auto industry. After that, went back to school, got my MBA, and then when I came back, that's actually when I was working at IBM with Senthil. So know him from back in those days. And so I was at IBM for a couple of years doing initially what you would call like business analysis work, which is when you're kind of defining like the specifications for what software is supposed to do. And then moved more and more into like project management. And so actually running the whole process of developing software. And then after that, took a position with a company called Booz and Company, which was doing strategy consulting. And kind of interesting. So I was with Booz and Company. Booz and Company was acquired by PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, which is where I work now. And then also when I was with Booz and Company, I was a management consultant. And so helped companies solve different business challenges. And that job used to have me traveling a lot. And so what I did was I took an internal role in PwC and a series of internal roles like overseeing software development was like product management, and then eventually ended up at a software startup, which was where I was overseeing North America. That was a lot of sales, and then just went back to PwC to keep doing sales. So I mean, it was just a lot of different jobs, a lot of different roles. And I enjoy doing the sales part of it. I enjoy kind of like solving problems for our clients. Also, I enjoy the challenge of it. And so that's kind of where I got to where I was.
Wow, that's quite a journey. Thank you for telling us that. A question I do have is, do you think it's still possible for someone to who like majored in engineering to be able to go into software or IT?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I guess it's a lot of times when you get into these roles or once you get into a company, it's easy to move, or I should say, not easy, but you can move around a little bit. And so, depending upon your interests and things like that. And that's one of the things I like about my current employer, PwC, is that they do give a lot of opportunities, like if you to explore different interests. And so, if you do want to try a role in like software sales, you can make that transition. And so, a lot of these larger organizations provide those opportunities. Um, yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because I never actually like set a goal. This isn't like the manifestation of a 10-year plan, to be honest. It just kind of where I've pursued my interests in, I'll say, a shorter term, and enjoy where I got from. So I certainly think it's possible. I don't know that there's necessarily any direct path where I could say like this is how you do it, but anywhere you're doing engineering, anywhere you're doing development, somebody's selling at. And so I think there's the opportunity in that. And same with like IT software, you can always get into, a software IT role from an engineering degree without too many issues.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and thank you. Another question I have is, out of all the jobs you've had so far, which one was your favorite and why?
It was actually probably my first job as an engineer. And so I was really fortunate in my first job out of undergrad. I worked for this company called Luke, and so that's Luk. It was a German company, part of a larger automotive company called the Schaeffler Group. And it was just really interesting. Number one, the work that I was doing. So I was writing code for double clutch transmissions. And at the time, that was a fairly new and emerging technology. And we were solving problems that nobody else had really solved before. And that was just a lot of fun because like you're really, you take different ideas that maybe have been developed in other areas, like say for a traditional automatic transmission or other types of transmissions, and you're applying them to these new problems and these new sets of challenges. And so that was really enjoyable. I had a lot of like really cool opportunities to present to leaders of auto companies around the world. I got to live in Germany in that job for 2 years, and so yeah, that was just a really exciting job, really exciting role. And I would say like from strict like enjoying what I did in my day-to-day job, that was probably my favorite. I enjoyed that a lot. I enjoyed working at the startup a lot. I mean, really everything I've done I enjoyed a lot, but if you my favorite was probably that first job with Luke.
Okay. Um, Another question I had is when you were in school, did you like have, I know you said that you just followed your interests to get where you are right now, but when you were in school, do you have any interest in IT?
Not really. And so I was always kind of into computers and I did enjoy like say programming. And so what was interesting was like when I was in undergrad, my job was actually, or so when I was in undergrad, I went to Kettering University, so probably in the Detroit area, you know it, up in Flint, Michigan. And so what they have there is a co-op program. And so what it was is like there you do 3 months of school, 3 months of work, 3 months of school, 3 months of work. And I was actually working with a company here in Cleveland called Lubrizol, another fantastic company. I've been fortunate that I've worked with a lot of for just absolutely fantastic top-notch companies. Um, and so there is where I really got my first taste of like programming and doing more of that IT work because what I was doing there was I was actually programming engine test cells. And so like Lubrizol, what they do is they're like an oil company or oil additives company, fuel additives, things like that. And so as they're developing these new, we'll say chemicals, new oils, new compositions, they would run them in engines to see how it affected the performance of the engine. And then they tear it all apart and do all sorts of measurements. And so you had to follow this very specific test where you'd say like, all right, we have to run the engine up at 1,000 RPM at such and such throttle, and then we take it up. And so it's a very prescribed test. And so my job was to actually program the engine test cells to actually run these tests. And I just found it fascinating. I mean, I enjoyed like what I really liked a lot was just kind of being able to directly see what you're doing. So like, mechanical engineering, the thing is like it's a long time from like when you actually design a part to when you actually even see the prototype, let alone it's in production. Whereas software, it's much, much quicker. You can go ahead and test whether it works or not within like a few minutes. And that's what I really enjoyed is like being able to, write some code, program it in the test cell, boom, there it's doing what I wanted to do. And so that was really kind of what drew my interest into programming initially. And then getting more into like software development and IT, I mean, that was really after my MBA when I went to work for IBM. And, again, almost by accident, because I didn't think my role was going to be as IT focused as it was, but did find that I enjoyed it a bit.
When you say being in IT requires you to be an extrovert or introvert,
I'd say it doesn't require either. You just kind of figure out what works. I think you find what you're comfortable with and then you kind of like pursue that. And I don't recommend somebody forces themselves, if you're an introvert, don't force yourself to be an extrovert because it's exhausting. And likewise, if you're an extrovert, like you shouldn't try to necessarily hide yourself either. So the thing is, like, within IT, there's various roles. I mean, there's programming, which, you can more or less, well, it's still a lot of teamwork involved, but you can do a lot on your own. Whereas then you kind of get into like business analyst positions where that's a lot more kind of working with different business stakeholders, different people. There's IT kind of liaison roles. And so what you find are all these different roles that can be more suited towards your skill set as well as just naturally who you are and where you fit in, I guess, where you feel the most comfortable.
Okay, thank you. Another question I have is, what's the lesson you learned over your career?
Um, there's been lots, um, but I think like some of the most important ones are, just number one, the one that's probably served me the best is saying yes and saying yes to different challenges and saying yes to trying new things and pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. And to me, that's been far and away the behavior that I've had that served me the best. For example, again, I talked about that first job I had with Luke. When I went there, I mean, I went and took a job where I was moving to Germany for 2 years. And it was just, I guess, my personality that I didn't even kind of think about, like, hey, what are the shortcomings of this? It's like, wow, that sounds fantastic. I'm going to do it. Um, and so I think like, and even like going to work for the startup, which I actually just did 3 years ago, again, just had an opportunity, um, knew some of the risks involved, et cetera, kind of figured out like what the downsides were and everything, but thought overall the benefits greatly outweighed the cons. And so said yes and went ahead and did it. So I think that's kind of one of the ones that have really served me the best is like, saying yes to opportunities, taking some of those risks, and being uncomfortable every now and then and taking on jobs that are difficult, that push you and are challenging. That's really served me well.
Okay. Um, if someone's starting out at your job, what advice would you give them?
I think the advice number one is to look for those opportunities to like push yourself, take on challenging roles, etc. I think a lot of it is, when I look at what I look for when I'm working with, like, say, one of my some of my younger colleagues or somebody who's just starting off, the behaviors that impress me the most are the people who can really like take on tasks and see them through to completion and communicate well how things are going when they're going well and when things are going poorly. And that's like something, there's like, of course, technical aptitude, right? Which is just like whether somebody's smart and they kind of understand, computer programming well, or they just understand, math well, etc. So I think that always, of course, like is good. But the things that really make somebody effective in a business role, it goes beyond that. And it really is, again, just being able to kind of think about what you're going to do, plan out your work, do what you said you were going to do, clearly communicate what's going on, share the bad news. That's the type of stuff I look for.
Okay. Would you do it any differently? Like your whole, like all your decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you can always say that. And like, there are certain decisions I made which probably weren't the best ones. But in the end, I'm happy with where I ended up. So I really, I struggle to say like, yeah, if I really wish I would have done that. Like, if you start looking at like what were the major decision points in my career, I think one was my decision to leave my engineering job to go back to school for my MBA. And so that was about 5 years into my career, and really, that was a job I enjoyed a lot, but even that was getting kind of repetitive, kind of redundant. And I was kind of thinking about, well, what's next? And did what I want to kind of stay with the same company and continue to advance in engineering roles, knowing that I was working in the US for a company that was headquartered out of Germany, which at the time seems like it had its shortcomings. Um, or did I want to kind of tear it all up and go back to school and go for my MBA? And so I chose to go to school for my MBA. And I don't necessarily say I regret it, but I have a lot of friends who stayed at that company and have done really well and have really interesting jobs as well. So it's like, yeah, if I would have stayed there, I'd be in a good role. Well, they're just doing really super interesting work now with like electric cars and everything like that. And it sounds really cool what they're doing. So I wouldn't say I regret it, but that's one decision I look back on. It's interesting to think about how that would have been different there. Um, Beyond that, not really. I mean, I again, there's decisions that I've made along the way where it's like, all right, in hindsight, maybe I should have tried something else, but no major regrets. And I guess that kind of goes back to another piece of advice too, that kind of goes along with what I said earlier about you know saying yes, which was, I guess you regret the things you didn't do more than you regret the things you do. And so when you're given an option to either kind of stay put or to try something different, I'm biased towards trying something different, and I think that's worked out well.
Okay. My final question is, what's one question you wish I would have asked you, and how would you have responded?
um, I don't know. You did a good job, I think, covering a lot of the questions here. Um, yeah, I can't really think of any. I mean, one would be like maybe, what is it that I enjoy about my job, right? Or what is it I enjoy about what I do right now? And why would I recommend it to someone? And and the answer I would give to that is just, what I enjoy about what I do now is just kind of like the challenge of trying to sell, um, trying to solve business problems, and I really think like when it's all said and done, when you think about like how a business operates, right, and what you need to do in order to, if you want to do a startup or anything, you need to drive revenue. You need to go out there and make sales. And so I think it's just a valuable skill set to have. It's really interesting work. It's fun kind of meeting with prospective clients and figuring out what they want to do and how do I position the product, et cetera. And it requires a lot of like thinking on your feet and really kind of like just taking like your technical understanding of how the software works, your understanding of how what the client's needs are, your understanding of just general psychology and how people think and just the buying process. And so there's just so much going on in terms of like how you actually have to put together a deal or how you actually work with someone. That's what I really enjoy.
Okay. Thank you for answering all these questions.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to.
It's been an honor to have you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for
Have
the
a,
opportunity.
have a great day. Bye.
You too. Thank you. Bye.